Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Sara Gottfried, and I'm here with Dr. Pedram Shojai. Hey, Pedram.
Hi, Sara. Nice to be here.
So good to have you. And we are talking today about getting rid of headaches. We're going to talk about the hacks that really make a difference when it comes to living a life without headaches. What do you think, Pedram?
Love it. I think our original topic for this was life is a headache, because there's so many things that could give you headaches in this world. And what we want to do in this show is unravel some of it. First, we'll kind of get into how we get into that mess, and then we'll come up with some life hacks and just some dietary stuff and self-massage stuff and whatever we can bring at you to help you unwind this mess, because headaches suck. And if you have a headache, it's really hard to be in the room. It's really hard to pay attention. It's really hard to do well in your career, all of it. And so there's a lot of ways out. And so hopefully we can help you today.
Right on. Well, Pedram, I think it might be helpful to put a little structure on it and to understand maybe what do you think of if you've got someone who comes in to see you and they say, "Doc, I got a headache." Like, where do you start?
You always got to play Sherlock, right? So there's kind of the three main types of headaches. You get your migraine, you get your tension, then you have your cluster. Migraine headaches, and we're going to get into these a little bit, you guys. But migraine headaches, more systemic. There's stuff going on with the hormones, neurotransmitters, stuff like that. If you have migraine headaches, we don't have to tell you how bad it sucks. And then from there, tension headaches. A lot of times comes from musculoskeletal stuff, neck tension that leads to headaches, things that come from you just kind of not living right and moving right in your body. And Lord knows there's enough tension in this world. And cluster headaches are this beast that are really hard to treat, and it's because blood flow isn't quite getting to parts of the brain, and they trigger these clusters of headaches. I think we could clear those right away and say the only thing I've seen work for that effectively across the board is oxygen therapy. So if you have cluster headaches, oxygen's your friend. There's some new stuff out there about this, but that's I think where Sara and I can most help people is migraines and tension, and that's where we have been hanging our hats for many years in a lot of ways. So let's jump in. I mean, do you have anything to add to that?
I would add that I totally agree with what you just described with the cluster headaches. I always, refer those folks to another person, preferably an integrative neurologist or someone who really understands how to deal with it. I would also say that the thing with headaches, I mean, it makes me think at a different level about the gut-brain axis, and it makes me think about how the brain needs three things. And this is true for all of us, and some of us are better at it than others. The brain needs oxygen, it needs glucose, and it needs this, it needs stimulation, neurostimulation. So those are some pieces that I think are really important across the board as we get a little deeper into this conversation, because I think so many people don't think of their gut when they have headaches, and I want to make sure that it's part of our conversation today. I mean, it always seems to be part of our conversation, Pedram.
I don't think you could have a conversation about medicine without it at this point. And I gotta digress for a second, because we just just had this baby, right?
Yes.
And so I'm so happy. Thank you. It's been wonderful, and it's also been 2 weeks early, and it's also been like, oh my God, this thing just happened. But as I sit there and trip on this phenomenon that is life that's arrived in our lives, it is so abundantly clear that we pretty much start as a digestive system and grow around it, right? I mean, anyone who's had a kid knows this, so front and center is everything about that kid's life is about either feeding, burping, pooping, and sleeping it off, and you keep growing and getting, and you kind of rinse and repeat until, the brain keeps developing and, more stuff starts happening upstairs. And we're going to talk about the upstairs a lot today, but you can't go upstairs without downstairs, because most of our neurology around the gut-associated lymphatic tissue and all of these nerve clusters that are forming around there, and we're finding so much out about this, starts there, and then the serotonin production is there. So I think we'd be remiss not talking about the gut in any conversation about headaches or pretty much anything.
Totally true. So we will weave that conversation in. I just was listening to a great interview with Chris Kresser. There, I said it.
Oh God, that crush of yours just won't go away.
I know. And he was talking about, this concept that we all have: fire in the gut, fire in the brain. And I think Grain Brain has really brought this to the forefront. We talked about that in a previous episode. So let's get to, some of the ideas here and some of the solutions. Should we start off with maybe migraines? Because I think, oh my gosh, the people who suffer with migraines are really so miserable. I grew up with a mom who's got migraines periodically, and so I don't suffer from them myself, but I think many people don't even realize that they have migraines. Maybe they just have light sensitivity, and they have to retire to their bedroom and have, the room completely dark. But I want to make sure that we, really offer some solutions when it comes to migraines.
Yeah, migraines to me are like a blown out tire on the road trip of life. No matter what you were doing that day, it's like screeching halt. You know what? I cannot handle any more input. And so they're terrible. So you are the hormone guru-S of the universe here. Why don't we get in on your end of that, because you have a lot to add on the migraine side. And I think it'd be super relevant to people who are suffering from migraines.
Yeah, well, a few things. Why don't we start with the food? Because you know how I love to frame it as, let's solve this by the way that you eat, move, think, and supplement. So let's start with the food. I think about the migraine generator. It's really a vascular problem in the brain, but you want to think upstream. Okay, what are the reasons why you're having spasm in the brain? Why are you triggering the migraine generator? So one is, when it comes to food, gluten. Gluten is our number one villain these days. It's an easy thing to cut out of your food plan if you have migraines. Number two is tyramine, and that's something that a lot of folks haven't heard about. It's maybe a little more complicated to understand and what it's in. So I thought we could talk about some of the foods that contain tyramine. We learned about tyramine as a trigger for the migraine generator in the 1950s, and that was when the antidepressants came out, the MAO inhibitors. We found that people who were on this particular antidepressant were more likely to have headaches when they ate certain foods. So what are those foods that contain tyramine? Number one, aged cheese, like the really good cheese. That contains a lot of tyramine. Number two, there's certain beers that have tyramine. And oh my gosh, a lot of beer has both gluten and tyramine. So it's like, double bad. Smoked fish, cured meats. And as I was looking at the list, Pedram, I was thinking, wow, I just went to this wine bar last week, and I think I had every single thing on this menu that contains tyramine. I had like a tyramine bomb.
Yeah, and if you have a tendency or proclivity to have migraines, I mean, you would just be on fire right now. And so how does someone find tyramine? I mean, is that on the nutrition label? I mean, where would you be able to tell if a food has tyramine unless you just knew what foods contained it?
I think it's a matter of trial and error, or what I prefer to call it, trial and success, where you figure out which foods are your trigger. And I can tell you, most migraineurs, which is our terrible name for people who have migraines, most folks who suffer with migraines know what their triggers are. They know that they can't have the aged cheese. They know that they have to pass on the charcuterie at their local restaurant. So I think you learn about this, but I want to especially talk to the people who have kind of a low grade level of inflammation in their gut and their brain. And maybe you don't have migraines that keep you from rocking your mission and doing your work in life, but it's like enough that it makes you get this message from your body that something needs to change. So I don't think it's on nutrition labels. I don't know that for sure, but I don't believe that is how you can find out about it. It's more, learning what foods contain them.
Got it. And so one of the things I've found in clinical practice is it's kind of one of these one-size-fits-all principle that I was very opposed to at first, because now every hippie doctor out there is doing elimination provocation, and it's so unnuanced and all that kind of stuff. And then I turned, because I realized that putting people on elimination provocation diets is so powerful. There's so many functional medicine docs out there that won't even see you unless you do one. And what we're talking about, obviously, is going off of all known triggers and going to a super neutral and bland almost diet, where you're having none of the known triggers like gluten and dairy, and you take out the tyramines, you take out all these things for at least 3 weeks so the body kind of relaxes, and then you add them back one at a time and see which one sets off the fireworks, and then you have your list of bad guys. And it's a very easy and effective way of finding out what your triggers are.
Totally agree. I mean, this is elimination provocation is the basis of functional medicine. And it's the way that you learn what some of your food triggers are, whether that's for, migraines or it's for brain fog or, skin issues. There's so many different ways that inflammation shows up in your body. And you want to know, okay, given my set of DNA, what are some of my triggers? And so I completely agree. I want to add that, for some people who are sick, say you have an autoimmune disease like lupus, or you have acne, sometimes it takes longer than just 3 weeks. So, if you don't notice a big difference after 3 weeks, it may be that we've got to unravel further damage and go even longer with elimination. So the next thing I want to talk about is some of the hormonal issues with migraines. And I want to start first with hypoglycemia, because I think that is something that so many people have, low blood sugar. We talk a lot about diabetes, about how 1 in 2 Americans has diabetes somewhere along the range from mild insulin resistance and a muffin top to full-blown diabetes. And I think a lot of folks don't realize that they have these really jagged ups and downs when it comes to their blood sugar. And when you're at that place where you have low blood sugar and you feel, it's almost like bonking in the gym where you just, you've depleted your glycogen, you just don't have the fuel that you need and glucose is low. When that happens, you feel irritable, you feel, you can start to get a migraine, you can get a headache, you just start to feel kind of achy and constricted. And it's not a pretty picture. We want to stabilize your blood sugar. We want to keep it, in this particular range, which is between about 70 and 110, 120, and not swing outside of that. So hypoglycemia is a big one. The next one is thyroid. So, I see so many folks who've got kind of low-grade thyroid issues. They don't even know it, but they're entering thyropause. Maybe they have other symptoms, but headaches are a really common one. It's funny because there's a lot of individual variability when it comes to symptoms with thyroid problems. Sometimes people have hair loss. Other people have just headaches. Some people just have weight gain. Some people have, all of the above. Some people have joint issues. So there's a lot of different ways that thyroid can show up, but that's one of the hormones you want to check out when you have headaches. And then last, I wanted to mention the issue of estrogen and progesterone. So estrogen and progesterone definitely can affect the migraine generator. This is a bigger conversation. I see a lot of people who have menstrual migraines, for instance, and when estrogen starts to drop and progesterone starts to drop the week before their period, that's when they develop a migraine. One of the things that some people recommend is using topical progesterone in that situation, to use a small amount of progesterone just to kind of make that slope of the drop in progesterone less abrupt. Other people recommend using like a small estrogen patch, which you'd have to get to a doctor and get a prescription for that, just to, again, to stabilize kind of the up and down that happens with estrogen. What I see in my practice is that so many women in perimenopause, oh my gosh, Pedram, I'm talking so long, I got to bring you in here. So many women in perimenopause start to have more migraines. And I think it's because of this jaggedness again with their estrogen and with their progesterone. So those are some of the things I see with migraines.
Love it. Love it. And you can never talk too much because I love listening. Yeah, you guys, the body likes rhythms. The body likes balance, and the body likes to know what the heck is going on. And when things get out of whack, right, things start to react. And so when the hormones are out of whack, the body is trying to compensate in these kind of shorter undulations, if you will, and that's not how it's set up. It's these longer rhythms, this long kind of sine wave of up and down that it's accustomed to. So that's modern life, right? We take kind of natural biological species and put them in these kind of capacitors, if you will, called cities, and we have them, these boiling molecules that are humans bumping into each other all the time, and things get stressed. Cortisol is, the stress hormone that impacts all of these hormones so significantly. We can talk about hormone triggers all day long with cortisol, and I don't think we can do it enough justice. We've done a few, go back and look at some of our back episodes if you're hearing this, because we did a full thing on blood sugar. We did a whole thing on hormone balance, and we could kind of fill in some of that information for you guys there. And we'll kind of dance around the subject to fill it out for you, because everyone's climbing this mountain in a different way. There's one thing that I'd like to mention before we move into anything tension, and that is chemical triggers and toxicity. Because I know so many people that'll be like, okay, I was fine until that lady walked into the elevator, and man, her perfume just knocked me out, right? And so we did that whole thing on endocrine disruptors, but we also have people developing very serious chemical sensitivities, because if you think about it, our bodies have evolved around nature for hundreds of thousands of years, and now there's 54 billion pounds of chemicals added every single day in the United States alone, and that's not even including pesticides and ag products and all this other stuff. I mean, it is a ridiculous number, right? And it's all of these chemicals being introduced into our environment every single day, and the body doesn't know what to do with them. And a lot of times the body is just like throwing up, flags saying, hey man, this thing, I don't know where to put it, right? Until finally there's this like heaping pile of it stashed away in some fat cells or cruising around in your blood, and eventually it rattles into a migraine, and we, all of a sudden are getting symptoms of pain. Those symptoms of pain are oftentimes, say, the smoke alarm, right? But the fire is somewhere else. And so once we start going into hormones and we start digging into kind of the etiology of some of these migraines, and we're not finding it, then it's like, all right, let's look at a tox panel, let's look at lead, let's look at arsenic, let's look at any chemical sensitivities that you may be having. And those environmental triggers oftentimes will come up if we're having trouble finding the source somewhere else.
Yeah, great point. And one of the things I commonly see with people who suffer with headaches is that they have mercury toxicity, or they have, a higher than average level of mercury. So I think this is such an important point, because mercury acts as the great masquerader. It causes headaches and fatigue and hair loss, low libido. What I often see is that it acts like a xenoestrogen. So just as you're describing with the 54 billion synthetic chemicals, what happens is the mercury can act like a fake estrogen in the body, and then it also disrupts your thyroid pathways. So it's one of those causes of migraines that I think about after we start to work on the food and do the elimination diet, and then start to balance the hormonal Charlie's Angels, your cortisol, your thyroid, and your estrogen. I wanted to make one other point about cortisol. Yes, it seems like we talk about cortisol every time because so many of us are up against big stress. And I think this is a key thing, especially with tension headaches. But we know that when you have high cortisol, and I say this with so much love and appreciation because I'm a recovering cortisol junkie, what happens is it tends to raise prolactin, which increases your pain sensitivity. So it starts to bring in this whole issue of serotonin, that lovely happy brain chemical that's in charge of, appetite and mood, sleep, and pain. And serotonin is not just another happy brain chemical, it's a gatekeeper. So when you're affecting that and you've got more sensitivity to pain, when you're inflamed from sitting too long and your neck is tense and you're not getting enough oxygen to your brain, that could trigger a migraine. So we want to be thinking in this very integrative way about how to create, the life without headaches.
Love it. I got to bring Tom Malter into the room. He's one of our genius nutrition researchers out there who's teaching all these doctors from all walks of life how to use nutrition in their clinical practices. And we were just filming with him the last couple days. And the dude's a genius. And one of the things one of the data sets that he's been following recently, and it has a lot to do with this, is how, we're talking about serotonin deficiency and serotonin problems leading to these migraines, and a lot of the drugs out there are targeting some of these serotonin pathways that seem to be helping with the migraines. But one of the things that he brought up that was really interesting to me is glyphosate, which is the pesticide that's specifically been genetically, designed to basically kill everything around genetically modified modified crops, except that genetically modified crop, what it's doing apparently is blocking the plant's ability to create tryptophan from the soil. It's blocking that pathway. So tryptophan leading to 5-HTP, leading to serotonin. It's like the precursors to this serotonin we are no longer getting through our crops, which is how we've gotten them for tens of thousands of years. And then before that, you know, we didn't have crops, we had plants and we ate them. And so this natural throughput of serotonin into our bodies and specifically our brains is being inhibited by these chemicals that we're using. So if you are having these problems, one of the other things that I would suggest, which is something I'd suggest to anyone anyways, is get off the GMO foods, go to an organic produce heavy diet, if not completely, you know, organic, and really start working on getting better foods down at the root of your absorption and working them all the way into the stalks down to the leaves. Because look, I mean, the head is very far away from the gut, and all these little micro capillaries and all these places where blood flow can get impacted and all these types of things happens kind of systemically in a lot of ways. And if you could fix the system, the canary in the coal mine, which oftentimes is the headache, eventually kind of goes away. And so that's, you know, again, Tom Malter has been kind of on the cutting edge of some of this research, and, you know, I just love listening to some of this because it makes sense. Why is everyone getting sick? Why does everyone have headaches? Why does it all suck so bad all of a sudden? Have we changed that much? Well, 54 billion pounds of chemicals each day. I mean, I have to keep repeating this because it's so stunning.
It is stunning. I think we need to make a wrap out of this, Pedram. And I just want to say amen, brother, for bringing up the glyphosate. You know, when we talk about genetically modified foods, I want to say just a couple things about it. I really appreciate this point about the tryptophan. I think most people think of tryptophan in their turkey. They think about it on Thanksgiving. And we're just not getting enough in our food plan because of the effect of GMOs. You can avoid it just by going organic. But I think it's also important to realize not only is tryptophan the grandmother of serotonin, it's the mother of 5-HTP, the grandmother of serotonin. It's also, you know, what happens with genetically modified food is that it becomes a sensitizer with other endocrine disruptors. So it makes, there's this synergy, kind of bad synergy that happens where when you're exposed to the 54 billion synthetic chemicals that are out there each day, you're going to be more vulnerable to them if you're also eating genetically modified foods. So that's going to cause things like headaches as well as many other symptoms. But let's, you know, you and I are East meets West meets best. And I want to talk a bit about, okay, what are some of the hacks? Like, what else can we do besides going organic, giving up the GMOs, getting the gluten and the tyramine out? You know, as you were talking about tension headaches, I started to feel tense in my neck, which is, you know, it's like the conduit between mind and body. And I was thinking, oh, I need to do a neck release. I think that would feel really good right now. So what are some hacks for the tension headaches, Pedram?
Love it. Posture is everything. So go back, listen to our show with Abel James. It's absolutely critical to understand that for every inch your head is forward, there's 10 more pounds of pressure on your neck alone. And then the neck muscles, I mean, everything's connected, right? So you take like the occipitalis, you take these muscles in the back of your neck, wrap around to the frontalis, wrap around to the temporalis, to the frontalis, all these, you know, muscles basically that are in the head that wrap around. So people like start with neck pain, all of a sudden they're like, it's in my eye, right? And that is not necessarily a migraine. It is sometimes a tension headache, and it just comes from these chains of muscles just getting tugged on because we're slumping over our, you know, our desks, or we're sitting there, you know, being mindless at the steering wheel, and all these things that we tend to do in our modern culture that gets us out of our thriving type of epigenetic expression of running around and being free and being pure and moving the blood. So I would say you got to get oxygen, which means get out there and move around, move your blood, get your circulation going, and absolutely critical to have your posture go. We're talking about upper cross, lower cross syndrome. So most of us collapse in around the hips and the shoulders kind of fall down. So for me, working on the lats and working on the lower traps, and I don't know, maybe we'll just do a quick video and put it on healthbridgeshow.com or something to show people these basic exercises to strengthen the posture to not collapse into this. is a best way of not getting stuck in the first place. I want to make a quick note about the tryptophan because it's also the grandmother or great-grandmother, depending on how far we were, for melatonin.
Oh, yes. I'm so glad you're bringing this up.
Yeah, because sleep, melatonin, we're not getting it, right? And so I know that's not the subject at hand here, but we did a whole thing on insomnia, and you go back and listen to that. But if you're not producing your happy sauce, that isn't converting to the melatonin, which lets you sleep, and the sleep is what kind of detoxifies the brain of all these chemicals that we inherit every day from our environment. So we build up our toxicity, we don't know how to get rid of it, next day again, no wonder we get all these headaches, right? So the entire system from the ground up starts at the roots of the plants. And for us, the root of our body is our gut. And so getting the nutrition through our root into our bodies can really change things fundamentally. But the point that you made earlier is really important here, you guys. Sometimes people see these results immediately, but sometimes it takes 3 to 6 months. I mean, if you spent 58 years getting into this mess, be patient, right? Work into health. It's a journey. It's not a destination. It's a journey.
Yeah, totally love that, Pedram. And I'm glad you brought up melatonin because, you know, if you're listening to us and you're not a person with headaches, we're talking much broader than headaches, of course. And when you look at things like your melatonin and your serotonin pathways, whether you're getting the tryptophan that you need from your food or if you need to supplement, like another issue here is dyscircadianism, like your circadian rhythm and loving up your circadian rhythm, being so consistent about the way that you sleep at night so that you catch the angel train. Have we talked about the angel train before? How the angel train leaves the station at 10 o'clock p.m. and you got to be in bed, like ready to catch the train or else it's gone.
I love it. It's like Harry Potter meets some sort of fantasy. I've never heard you say this, so bring it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is like Ayurvedic Harry Potter because it's, you have in Ayurveda, there's these doshas, right? And there's different personalities to these 4-hour blocks of the day. If you divide 24 hours into these 3 doshas, there's 2 sets of them. And at 10 o'clock, it's pitta time. And that's when I'm pitta dominant. So it's like super alpha, like in your face, achiever, crazy. And you can go into that pitta time and like stay on your computer, writing, emailing, and get out of balance with your pitta dosha, or you could do the opposite. You could catch the angel train. So 10 p.m., that's one of the best ways to rock some of these hormones that we're talking about. You want to mind your circadian rhythm. We're getting more and more data. This is also going to be the next 10 years of medicine, how to reset your circadian rhythm, because when you have a phase shift, either ahead or behind, it causes problems in the body. It's linked to not just headaches, but breast cancer and other types of cancer. It sets up that inflammation in the body that is the root of all chronic disease.
Think of the baby, right? The baby has a rhythm. The baby, you know, it's basically, it needs to eat, and then it goes through this whole thing, and it has these cycles, and you can get the baby in a rhythm. He's a happy baby. If you don't have a happy baby, y'all know what happens, right? You're up all night listening to a screaming baby, and I'm learning that front and center right now. Pedram. We're figuring that one out. There's something I gotta throw in some yeast over here, because one of the big symptoms that we see in migraines is photophobia, you know, aversion to light. And in Chinese medicine, that comes from what we call liver yin deficiency, and it's this real fundamental tapping out of the juice, the sauce that keeps the body going, the lubricant that's from the kidneys and the liver that is our essential yin element that is there to kind of complement and match the fire. And we're all just so fiery all day. We're out there doing our things and we don't rest. We just drink coffee when we're tired and all that. And when you start burning that up, when you start burning down the wax on the candle, you start to have all these symptoms come up. Right? And so a lot of this also has to do with, yes, getting your circadian rhythms in line, because if you are light sensitive, your body just cannot handle the waking hours, and it's completely phase shifted and out of rhythm. But it also means, man, you just got to get some more rest. Give your body its kind of innate ability to heal itself, and a lot of times that stuff starts happening. And so I know a lot of people that'll be like, well, I started eating organic and I took, you know, maca and I took all these other things that all these doctors told me and I still can't do it. And you're like, well, dude, look at your schedule, man. you know, you got to do a little bit of time management and slow down a little bit and honor your body when it's tired. And a lot of times that ends up being the unlock, right? and so I think we would be remiss not talking about lifestyle a little bit in this headache conversation, because yes, it's how we walk, it's how we sit, it's how we move. You know, we talked about this before. I'm standing at a standing desk now. I just won't sit anymore because I was finding myself collapsing over, and then I was getting neck tension, and then you get some headaches with that. And it's like, what am I doing? You know, it's like you end up aging by putting yourself in postures that your body doesn't like to be in naturally. And so let's get into our sexy librarian moment here, because we're kind of running out of time, and you and I could do this forever. And we'll, you know, and you guys, if you're listening to this, go to healthbridgeshow.com, go to iTunes comments section, let us know what you think, and let us know what more out of this you would like to hear, because we're kind of like a Swiss Army knife. We can go in a lot of directions, and we're here to help you guys. So, and a lot of our shows are coming from suggestions from the audience. So, you know, really, we work for you.
Yes, yes, sir. And I am happy to go sexy librarian. And I wanted to say on the posture thing, there's this neck release I learned from Anna Forrest, who's going to be coming up soon as one of our guests. She's she's one of my current teachers of yoga, and the neck release just totally rocked my world when I started doing it. I had this interesting experience, Pedram, where when I was working at the HMO, the unnamed HMO, I was so tense every night when I got home that I would pop 800 milligrams of ibuprofen. Oy. And, you know, I just had so much tension in my neck and my jaw. And it was, you know, part of it was that I didn't love what I did. You know, that whole thing of getting the stimulation that you need, the glucose, the oxygen, the stimulation to your brain. I wasn't doing the kind of work that I loved. And it was creating this unbelievable tension. I felt like I could, you know, like lift a car with my jaw. So if you're doing that, if you're popping ibuprofen like every day, that's a sign that you have a headache and you got to fix this. So neck release, I'm gonna make sure that we post a YouTube video that I have showing how to do the neck release. So here's sexy librarian. Number 1, get rid of the gluten. Number 2, tyramine. Get the tyramine out of your food plan, the aged cheeses, smoked fish, cured meats, and some beer. Number 3, hypoglycemia. Make sure that you're not having those jagged peaks and troughs when it comes to your blood sugar. Number 4, love up your thyroid. Really make sure that it's in the happy zone. Number 5, estrogen and progesterone. They also can trigger the migraine generator. You want to be careful about that. Number 6, big stress. We talked about how high cortisol raises prolactin, increases your sensitivity to pain. Then you brought in this great point, number 7, about glyphosate, genetically modified food, and how it can block your ability to make serotonin. So we want to get rid of the GMOs. We want you to eat organic. Number 8, posture. You referred us to the call that we had with Abel James where we talked about some of the posture hacks. And then number 9, melatonin sleep. You brought up yin deficiency and just how we need to create more balance when we get this message from the body that a headache is here.
Love it. It's almost as if we're going to have to brand. We have big tobacco, we have big oil, and now we have big stress.
It's true. It's true. I was talking to a guy yesterday who said, you know, there's studies now looking at sitting, and they compare it to the damage of cigarette smoking. Like they're all kind of the same. And I would say stress is right in there with the cigarettes and the sitting.
Yeah, and the broader definition of stress is stress you're putting on your biomechanics, stress you're putting on your body. The body likes to move. It likes stress, i.e. climbing up a hill, i.e. you know, chopping down a tree and building a log cabin for your wife or something. It doesn't like sitting around and, you know, crunching over an iPad. That's not the kind of stress that that's not the kind of stress that we were designed to take, and our bodies don't even know what to do in those positions.
So Pedram, I'm thinking maybe you're going to build me a log cabin as your work wife.
Oh my God. You know, work wife deserves a log cabin for sure. And you know what? That would be such a relief to just go up into the woods and build a log cabin right now.
Okay, let's plan that one.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's go find it. We'll do podcasts from there. So,
right on.
Yeah.
Okay, so life without headaches. I think we have crafted a life without headaches.
Yeah, and I think a follow-up to this would be maybe a whole show on how to manage your relationship with your spouse and how to live with other people, because a lot of us have headaches from how we are bad at coexisting with the people in our world. So maybe we'll follow up with that, because learning how to interact with humans and interact with people that maybe generate some of our headaches through our perception of events is also huge, and I think that we would have some fun doing it.
No question. I have to say, for women, relationship stress is the #1 stress. I mean, nothing takes down your adrenals faster. I think guys are a little more resilient when it comes to relationship stress, but for women, it's, we tend to befriend. So we definitely have to do a show on that.
Yeah, we do work stress, and we're idiots when it comes to relationship stress, but then we get into like fights because we don't understand what they're talking about when we're being insensitive. So yeah, okay, new show, we'll do that for sure. Guys, hope you enjoyed this. The Health Bridge, get us at healthbridgeshow.com, and you can find where both of us hang out in our universes and find out who we are. And we also have a bunch of gifts and just kind of free giveaway stuff that we've created for you guys as resources, because we are here to help.
That's right. Okay, everybody, thank you for joining us today. So happy to be with you. I'll see you next time.
See ya.